Hey class, this is Mr. Clark. This is History 20. These are the video lecture notes for Chapter 3.2, which is entitled The Rise of Buddhism and Jainism in India, and Confucianism, Taoism, and Legalism in China. Next slide. India is the birthplace of several of the world's largest religions. One of those faiths is Buddhism. And here you can see how Buddhism spread out throughout Asia from India. Next slide. Gautama Buddha was born around 566 BCE near the modern-day Nepal in northern India. And Gautama was the founder of Buddhism. Next slide. The Buddha sought enlightenment through meditation. Meditation in the Buddhist faith is the key to enlightenment. Next slide. Among the basic beliefs of Buddhism are transmigration of souls, karma, and nirvana. The middle way eliminates suffering. The Four Noble Truths are the basic main beliefs of Buddhism. The first of those Four Noble Truths is life is full of suffering. The second is suffering is caused by desire. The third is eliminate suffering by eliminating desire. And the fourth is eliminate desire by following the Eightfold Path, often known as the middle way. Next slide. After the death of Gautama Buddha, there was a split in Buddhism. The Theravada and the Mahayana sects. And that was the first major split in Buddhism. Next slide. Eventually, Buddhism spread to other parts of Asia and virtually died out in India starting in the 1st century BCE. So it's ironic that Buddhism had its start in India, but it had more impact elsewhere, like in China, Korea, and Japan. Next slide. Mahavira founded Jainism in the 5th century BCE in India. Next slide. Jainism, like Buddhism, focused on meditation. All life was considered sacred. Nonviolence was a key element of this faith, and here's some more of the basic teachings of Jainism. This ancient religion had a profound impact on subsequent Indian religious thought, especially the philosophy of Gandhi. Next slide. Confucius was born in India around 550 BCE. His teachings heavily influenced Chinese religious thought. Next slide. As a contemporary of the Greek philosopher Socrates, Confucius taught his students in a similar manner. It's very interesting to note that Confucius and Socrates were alive at almost the exact same moment in history. Both of them are known as great teachers and great thinkers and great reliers on logic and reason and common sense. Next slide. Confucius's philosophy was based on the ideal of the Zen, which means living with humility, benevolence, and love. Next slide. Confucius highlighted 5 basic relationships which shape human interaction. Those relationships are father-child, ruler-subject, husband-wife, elder brother, younger brother, friend to friend. And his quote is, "A country would be well governed when all the parties perform their parts aright in these relationships," end quote. Next slide. Mencius is often referred to as the, quote, second sage. A follower of Confucius, he built on the original ideas several centuries later. And here's a quote by Mencius, "Friendship is one mind in 2 bodies," end quote. Next slide. Another influential Chinese religion was Taoism. In many ways, Taoism is considered the opposite of Confucianism. Next slide. Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, was a contemporary of Confucius. He believed that civilization corrupted people. Here's a quote by Lao Tzu. "Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Next slide. He claimed that the world's problems were caused by governments doing too much, not too little. Next slide. Legalism arose in China in the 300s BCE as a response against both Confucianism and Taoism. And here's a chart that shows some basic beliefs and comparing these three religions that had so much impact in China. Legalism teaches that people are bad by nature and need to be controlled by strict laws and punishments, that people should be accountable for each other's behavior, that good behavior should be rewarded, and that rulers should not be kind, as this would be mistaken for weakness and will lead to rebellion and failure. And this, again, is a response against these other two philosophies that came before. Next slide. Legalism was a philosophy which became popular in China among the ruling class for obvious reasons. The ruling class adopted this philosophy to maintain order and their position in society. Next slide. Under this philosophy, people were viewed as evil. The government was necessary to control the demands of people with strict laws. Next slide. China's Qin dynasty in the 300s and 200s BCE was heavily influenced by this philosophy and built an efficient state. Next slide. This dynasty was ultimately overthrown amid turmoil in the year 206 BCE. Next slide. And that's it for the lecture notes for chapter 3.2. See you later.